Bechukotai telechu. If you walk in my statutes. Rashi tells us this doesn't mean keeping the mitzvot. That's the end of the pasuk. This means if shetiva melin b'Torah, that we should toil and work hard in Torah. Talk about toiling in Torah. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh gives 42 different explanations of how to understand this pasuk. And number 42, the last one, he makes reference to a very interesting story in Bava Metzia. The Gemara tells us that Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Chanina used to argue. And Rabbi Chanina would say, how can you argue with me? If chas v'shalom, if God forbid, the Torah would be forgotten from all of Yisrael, I, through my sharp mind, would bring it all back. I could remember the whole Torah. I could reproduce it. And Rabbi Chia responded to him, how can you argue with me? I would ensure that the Torah would never be forgotten in the first place. What would I do? I would plant flax, and I would harvest it. I would weave a trap out of it. I would ensnare a deer. I would check the deer and feed its meat to orphans, and then I would use the skins to make parchments. I would write the 5 books of the Torah on the parchments, and I would teach 5 different children the 5 books, and I would teach 6 different other children the 6 orders of the Mishnah, and I would tell everyone, by the time I come back, teach it to all your friends, and in that way I would ensure that Torah would not be forgotten from all of Israel. And the Gemara makes it clear that Rabbi Chia won that argument. Rabbi commends Rabbi Chia. He says, Kama na'im ma'aseh Rabbi Chia. How great are the deeds of Rabbi Chia. So what is it about Rabbi Chia? What is it about his approach that was so successful? So one aspect is what the Orach Chaim was telling us, that we have to really toil in the Torah. It's not just enough to teach Torah. We have to really work hard in all the steps of learning Torah. But there are a few other things, because something's strange about this. Why is it important that Rabbi Chia used to he would feed the meat of the deer to orphans? What does that have to do with? It's a very nice mitzvah, of course, but what does that have to do with the success of Torah? And Rav Aaron Keller explains this was not just a separate mitzvah. This was part and parcel of ensuring the Torah would not be forgotten. That acts of chesed, acts of kindness, are actually instrumental in our success in Torah. And we have to couple our learning the Torah with chesed. And one final note is that Rabbi Chanina, he said, he was very impressive. He could reproduce the whole Torah by himself. But what would happen when Rabbi Chia died? He wasn't going to live forever. Rabbi Chia, how did he ensure that the Torah would not be forgotten? He invested and focused on the next generation. He was going to teach the children the 5 books of Moshe and the Sidrei Mishnah. He was going to focus on the next generation. So as we approach the holiday of Shavuot, where we're going to be reaccepting the Torah, let's try to keep these messages in mind. To first of all be amelin b'Torah, to work hard at it, toil in it, to couple our Torah with acts of chesed, and lastly, not just to focus on our own Torah, but also to invest and see the future of Torah in our children and our young ones. Shabbat Shalom.